Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true disturbing stories about motels in the Appalachian Mountains. Places where the vacancy sign might be the last thing you see. One man checked into room 6 and woke up to find a Polaroid of himself asleep, taken from inside the room. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share this with your friends, and let me know where you're watching from. Thanks. Now let's get into it. My name's Matt. I was 27 when this happened. I was making the drive from Knoxville out to Asheville to visit my brother Greg. He'd just moved into a new place and kept bugging me to come see it, so I finally gave in. I'd done the drive before, probably 3 or 4 times. It's not bad. 5 hours, give or take, depending on stops and how much traffic wants to ruin your day. I left later than I should have. One of those, I'll just grab one more thing kind of afternoons that somehow eats an hour without you noticing. By the time I hit the road, it was already a little after 6. Still, I figured I'd be in Asheville by 11 at the latest. Didn't happen. About 3 hours in, somewhere past where the towns start thinning out, I noticed my gas gauge creeping toward the red. I wasn't panicked, just annoyed. Normally, I fill up before long drives, but I'd forgotten this time. I figured a station would show up soon, but nothing did. 15 minutes went by, then 20, just woods. No exits, no signs, no houses. The trees pressed right up to the road in that way that makes you realize how far out you are. Then my GPS froze. Completely dead, just stuck on the last position. I checked my signal. No bars, not a single one. And then I noticed something else. I hadn't seen another car in a while. Not behind me, not coming toward me. The road was completely empty. I looked out at the trees and had this brief, ridiculous thought, like I'd slipped into a different place without realizing it. Eventually, I saw a ramp. No signs, no markings, just a beat-up wooden board nailed to a post, pointing right. Looked like it once had words, but they'd long since faded into the grain. I slowed down. Something told me not to take it, but I was running on fumes. I figured it had to lead somewhere. I took it. The dirt road was narrow, uneven, and clearly not built for regular traffic. My car rattled so hard I thought the bumper might fall off. After about 5 minutes of climbing uphill and dodging potholes, I saw lights. A motel. It sat by itself, just beyond a break in the trees. 1 story. Maybe 10 rooms, all in a straight line. Office in the middle. The whole place looked stuck in another decade. Maybe the 70s, if I had to guess. The neon sign above the office door buzzed faintly and read, Mountain Rest Motel, though a couple of the letters blinked in and out like they were trying to disappear altogether. The gravel lot was mostly empty except for a white pickup truck that looked like it had been through a war. Mud all over it, big crack in one of the taillights, and an empty dog crate sitting in the back. It was parked crooked, like whoever drove it didn't care. I pulled in and parked a few spots down. The front office door was unlocked, so I stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the cigarette smell, thick and stale, like the walls had been smoking for decades. The guy behind the counter didn't acknowledge me at first. He was hunched over behind a desk, watching a small TV mounted up in the corner. The screen was all static, but he stared at it like it was showing something important. "You looking for a room?" he asked, eyes still on the TV. "Yeah, just for tonight." Without saying anything else, he reached under the counter, pulled out a real key, metal, with a green plastic tag that was cracked down the middle, and slid it toward me. "Room 6, he said, $60. Cash." I handed him the cash. No ID, no questions, no paperwork. He didn't even glance at me. I stood there for a second, waiting for something, maybe a receipt, maybe a have a good night, but he just went back to staring at the static. I left the office and walked down to the far end, room 6, right where the building curved toward the woods. The door creaked when I opened it, loud and slow, like in a movie where you know something's waiting inside. The room was what you'd expect for $60 in the middle of nowhere. Dim light, Smelled like a mix of musty fabric, overused cleaning spray, and damp carpet. The wallpaper had peeled back in one corner, exposing yellowed plaster. The bedspread was a faded maroon and looked like it hadn't been washed in a month. The AC under the window rattled, but didn't really cool anything. I tossed my bag onto the single chair in the corner and locked the door. Then I checked the window. The latch worked, but I clicked it twice just to be sure. I lay down on the bed without taking off my shoes. The mattress felt lumpy, like there were hidden objects inside it. It sagged in the middle, and every time I shifted, it groaned. At some point, I dozed off. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up because of the footsteps. They were slow, crunching across the gravel outside. Not fast like someone walking past, slow like someone stopping every couple of steps. Then they stopped, right outside my door. I held my breath, just lay there listening. I don't know how long I stayed like that, maybe a full minute. Then the footsteps continued, heading further down the walkway. I told myself it was just another guest, someone grabbing something from their truck. Nothing weird. I almost believed it. But 20 minutes later, I heard them again. Same pace, same stop. I got up this time and crept to the peephole. Nobody there, just the row of doors, the buzzing neon light. I stepped back, unsure if I was imagining things. The third time, I didn't wait. I grabbed the handle and yanked the door open. No one there, but the doormat was flipped over. I hadn't even noticed a mat before. I crouched and flipped it back. There was a Polaroid underneath it. It showed the room, this room, taken from the doorway. You could see the bed, the desk, the closed curtains. A man was mid-step in the photo, walking toward the bed. Not me, wrong clothes, different body shape. But it was definitely room 6. I stepped back inside, locked the door again, and just sat in the chair by the window. I watched the parking lot. The truck didn't move. No lights in the other rooms turned on. It was like the whole place had frozen. I didn't sleep, just sat there until the sky started to lighten. And then 2 knocks on the door. Not frantic, not casual, just 2 quick raps. Measured. I went to the peephole. It was the guy from the front desk. He stood there holding a red plastic gas can. Saw your car was low, he said. Figured you'd need a top-off before heading out. I hadn't told him about the gas. I hadn't said a word about my car. I opened the door just enough to take the can. Thanks, I said. Then I closed it again. He didn't walk off immediately, just stood there for another second staring at the door. Then he finally turned and left. I packed fast, threw everything in my bag and dropped the key on the bed. I didn't look in the bathroom, didn't check under the bed. I just walked out. When I reached my car, I saw it, tucked under the windshield wiper. Another Polaroid. It showed me in bed, face turned toward the camera, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. Same blanket, same lighting, same everything. I didn't waste a second. I got in, fired up the engine, and peeled out of the lot. The car bounced like hell down that dirt road. I didn't stop until I hit the highway and saw headlights from another car coming the other way. I drove straight into the next town I saw, pulled into a gas station, filled the tank, and went inside to grab coffee. While I was paying, I asked the cashier, "Hey, do you know anything about a place called Mountain Rest Motel? Maybe 20 minutes from here, off a dirt road." He squinted at me. "Mountain Rest? That place burned down, man, like 10 years ago. Pretty sure nobody's been up there since." I didn't say anything, just nodded and walked out back and tossed both Polaroids into the dumpster. I kept driving, didn't tell anyone. I was 32 the first time I ended up in this half-forgotten town called Larchwood. It wasn't even on my map app at first. I had to zoom in twice before it popped up. I'd been doing long-haul driving for a couple years by then. Nothing too sketchy, just regional runs and occasional fill-ins for routes no one else wanted. This was one of those fill-ins. I remember turning off Highway 13 that evening after a 12-hour stretch. My back was killing me, and my left leg had gone a little numb from pressing the clutch too long in stop-and-go traffic outside Stillwater. I was just looking for a place to sleep that wasn't my front seat. My phone battery was already at 6%, and I couldn't get more than 2 bars of service since about 30 miles back. So when I saw a wooden sign, weather-beaten and barely upright, with peeling letters that said Timber Pines, vacancy, I figured it was better than nothing. The driveway was this weird gravel-mud combo that hadn't been leveled in years. My truck fishtailed a bit going in, which woke me up more than I liked. Off to the left, there was what looked like an old diner, Ellie's Grill. But the windows were dark and the roof sagged like it was giving up. Past that, a line of tiny cabins stood with boards across the doors and vines twisting up their porches. They looked like they hadn't had guests since Clinton was in office. I pulled up in front of the lodge, if you could even call it that. The sign buzzed and blinked red, half the neon letters dead. It just said Timmerpines when I stepped under it. I could hear the buzz from the tubes above me, and for some reason, that sound made the skin on the back of my neck prickle. Inside the lobby, it was dead quiet. The air smelled like burnt plastic mixed with something I still can't name. Maybe stale instant coffee and hot dust from old electronics. There was a TV mounted up in the corner showing static on mute. The guy at the counter looked like he'd been sitting in the same chair for a decade. Gaunt face, cheeks like deflated balloons, gray hair slicked back in this half-hearted way that made it worse. He didn't look up when I stepped in. I said hi twice before he shifted in his seat, like I'd just interrupted something important. "You need a room?" he asked. Without really asking, I nodded. He pulled a key off a board behind him, one of those heavy brass ones with the red plastic tag. The number was worn off, but he said, "Room 6. Then he added, $40, cash. Don't park near room 3. Generator's right there, hums loud all night." I handed him 220s. He took them like it physically hurt him and shuffled behind a curtain that barely covered the doorway behind the desk. No receipt, no check-in form. That was it. I walked down the hall, passing rooms that all looked like they'd been repainted with the same depressing beige sometime in the last century. My door creaked when I opened it, loud and long, like in those old VHS horror movies my older brother used to make me watch when I was a kid. The room was exactly what you'd expect. One bed, mattress like cardboard, a nightstand with cigarette burns, a rotary phone that probably hadn't worked since Y2K, and a TV that hummed faintly even when it was off. I flipped it on, just static. Tried fiddling with the knob, still static. The curtains were this stiff, yellowed lace that looked like they'd disintegrate if I sneezed on them. I cracked the window just an inch to let some air in, then started to unpack. That's when it happened. Knock, 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 knock. 4 slow, spaced knocks, right on the wall behind the headboard. I froze, one sock halfway off. I waited, but nothing followed. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. I looked out the window. Nothing but the dead-end strip of cabins and a broken vending machine under a flickering light. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to convince myself it was pipes, or maybe an animal, or the wind, even though the air had been dead still when I stepped out of my truck. I went to the bathroom, splashed some water on my face, dried off with a towel that smelled like stale fabric softener, and climbed into bed. Somewhere around midnight, I woke up soaked in sweat. The TV was blaring max volume, still static. I scrambled up, thinking I'd rolled onto the remote or something, but it wasn't anywhere near me. Then I heard it again, 4 knocks. Same wall. I sat perfectly still. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't me being tired. I got up slowly, turned the TV off and listened. I barely breathed. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Creak, pause. Creak. My door creaked open just slightly. I hadn't locked it, and there he was. Desk guy, half in shadow, face just barely lit by the dim hallway bulb. No emotion, just standing there like he'd been waiting for something. "Just you in there?" he asked, soft and flat, like he was reading a script. "Yeah," I said, but I heard something. In the wall. He didn't move for a second. Then he said, "That's odd," and walked away. That was it. I stepped into the hallway, looked both ways. Dead quiet. I moved to room 5 next door. The door was sealed tight. Lock looked ancient. No scratches, no wear on the handle, like no one had touched it in years. I knocked once. Nothing. Back in my room, I dragged the dresser in front of the door. It wasn't heavy, but it scraped loud enough to make me wince. I stacked the chair on top for good measure. Then I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. The silence in that room wasn't normal. It felt aware. At 3:12 a.m., I remember the time exactly. The knocking came again. 4 knocks. Pause. 8 knocks. Longer gaps. Slower, like someone or something was considering each one. Then, clear as anything, a voice from the wall whispered, "I know you're awake." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was close, right next to my ear. A woman's voice. Cracked, tired, and something else I still can't name. I jumped up, yanked the dresser aside, twisted the lock, and pulled the door open. He was there. Same guy, same clothes, same blank face. "You woke her up," he said. Not angry, just resigned. I couldn't speak. I was drenched in sweat. My hand was still on the doorknob, frozen. He leaned in slightly, voice low. "Don't stay." I grabbed my bag and ran. Didn't even bother with socks. 2 steps and I was in my truck, keys already in hand. He stood in the doorway and watched me back out. Didn't move. Didn't blink. I drove for almost an hour until I found a gas station with working lights and a couple of parked cars. I slept in the front seat with the doors locked and my hoodie pulled over my head. That lot felt safer than anything I'd felt since pulling off the highway. 2 days later, I couldn't shake it. I called the large county clerk's office. Asked about Timber Pines Lodge. The guy on the other end paused for a long time. Then he said, "That place burned down in '09. Total loss. Never reopened." My name's Nate. I was 33 when this happened, and it's the only time I've ever seriously thought I might lose my mind. It started on a Tuesday. My cousin's funeral was supposed to be that morning down in Roanoke, but it got postponed. Something about paperwork, delays, whatever. I'd already taken the time off work, so I figured, why not just go anyway? I needed a break. Things had been off, stressful. Work stuff, family stuff, all the usual background noise, so I packed a bag, threw it in the backseat, and took the long way south through the Appalachians. No GPS plan, just cruising through the hills and valleys, stopping for gas station snacks and bad coffee. I had this idea in my head that I'd get one of those peaceful road trip moments you see in movies. Just me, some music, maybe a podcast, windows down. That didn't happen. By the time the sun started going down, I realized I'd made a few miscalculations. First, the back roads I was on weren't exactly well lit or marked or, paved consistently. Second, I'd gotten way too comfortable coasting on 1 bar of signal. And third, I'd let my tank dip way lower than I should have, assuming I'd pass through another town soon. But town never came, just trees. Endless miles of them. No lights, no houses. No shoulder to pull over on. I hadn't seen another car in almost an hour. The quiet wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt off. Like the woods were just waiting. Then, out of nowhere, this wooden board came into view. It was nailed to a leaning post, half covered in vine. Looked like it hadn't been touched in a decade. Black painted letters, barely readable. Misty Pines Motor Inn. To me. Not exactly promising, but I was out of options. 2 miles later, I rolled into what I guess you could call a parking lot. It was basically a flat area with more weeds than pavement. Huge cracks everywhere, like the ground had given up trying to hold itself together. The motel was a single row of 10 rooms, maybe 11. Faded yellow siding, wood panels peeling in long strips, rust dripping down from the corners of every window. AC unit. No lights, no cars, just me and the sound of gravel crunching under my tires. I pulled up in front of the office, which had one sad little bulb above the door, flickering like it wanted to die but couldn't quite manage it. Inside, there was a woman sitting behind the counter, reading a paperback that had no cover and looked like it had been through a flood. Her hair was dyed pitch black, chopped into a jagged bob that made her look like she cut it herself in the mirror with kitchen scissors. Her glasses were massive, thick lenses that made her eyes look slightly cartoonish. She didn't glance up. "Hey," I said, walking in. "I need a room for the night." She looked up slowly, as if I'd interrupted something critical, folded her page, set the book down with exaggerated care. "Cash only." I blinked. "Seriously? No cards?" She tilted her head toward a wrinkled paper taped to the wall behind her. It read, "No cards, no refunds, no exceptions." The letters had faded so much they were almost pink. I pulled out my wallet and handed over 320s. She took them without counting and slid a green plastic keychain across the counter, old school, with a tarnished brass key dangling off it. Room 6. Still no sign of other guests. I looked back at the row of rooms as I walked. All the blinds were pulled tight. No glow of light through the cracks. No sounds. Nothing to say the place was even alive. Room 6 creaked when I opened the door. It smelled like damp carpet and air freshener that had given up years ago. The carpet was a washed-out brown, threadbare in the middle like it had been walked on by the same ghost for 30 years. The bedspread had a faded floral pattern. Roses, maybe? Could have been blood spatters for all I knew, honestly. There was one chair, one little side table with a lamp. I turned the lamp on. It flickered like it was trying to make a dramatic entrance, then held steady. The TV looked like it had been stolen from a thrift store and dropped a few times, for good measure. No remote, just a cracked dial on the front. I sat on the edge of the bed and checked my phone. No signal, of course. I sighed, grabbed my cigarettes and stepped outside. That's when I saw it. Room 4 had a light under the door. Just a thin strip, barely visible, but definitely there. That shouldn't have been possible. I hadn't heard another car. The woman hadn't checked anyone else in. There were no signs of life in any other room. I stood there, staring, waiting for something to move. Then, click. The door to room 4 creaked open. Just a few inches, like someone was peeking out. I flicked my cigarette away and went back inside. I locked the deadbolt, then pushed the chair under the knob, legs angled tight. I laid down, fully clothed, shoes on, staring at the ceiling like it was going to give me answers. I didn't even close my eyes. Eventually, I turned off the lamp. I must have drifted off at some point because the next thing I remember was, "Knock, knock," soft, almost polite. I sat up straight. The room was pitch black. I didn't move, just listened. Knock, 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 lightly longer. Still that same softness, too soft, like whoever was knocking didn't want anyone else to hear. Then the doorknob started to rattle, not like a burglar trying to force their way in, more like someone just testing it, slowly, patiently. The chair creaked. I didn't breathe. My chest ached from holding still. Then it stopped. No footsteps, no shuffle of someone walking away, just silence. I waited, counted in my head. 10 minutes passed, maybe more, before I slid off the bed and crawled toward the window. I parted the blinds barely an inch. The porch outside my door was empty, but room 4, its door was now wide open. No light inside, just blackness, like someone had cut a hole in the world. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At first light, I grabbed my bag and headed back to the office. The woman was gone. In her place was a stocky guy, probably mid-40s, pale skin, buzz cut, Marine Corps tattoo on one forearm. He didn't say good morning, didn't ask how I slept. I slid the key across the counter. "This place still get visitors?" He didn't look up. "Not usually." "What's with room 4? That got his attention. He looked at me. "Which room were you in?" He paused. "That used to be room 4. I frowned. "What does that even mean?" He walked over to this faded fire escape map on the wall. You know the kind. Outdated, sun-bleached, cracked laminate. He pointed to room 6. That was originally room 4. We renumbered them. People kept hearing things, seeing things. had a couple disappear. So renumbering was supposed to fix that? He didn't answer. I walked out, but before I got in the car, I crossed over to room 4. Up close, I saw there was no handle, no lock, just a metal plate where a knob used to be, painted over in the same peeling yellow. But I'd seen that door open. I'd heard knocking. I got in my car and drove away without saying another word. About an hour later, my phone lit up again. Signal came back. I pulled off at a diner and opened Google Maps to check my history. Nothing. It showed my route through the mountains, but no stop, no detour, just a straight, uninterrupted drive. I searched for Misty Pines Motor Inn. No results, no website, nothing. I was driving from Cleveland to Asheville one late summer evening. I thought I was being smart. GPS showed a route through the Monongahela Hills via Route 219. It'd shave off nearly an hour. The voice said, "Turn left in 800 feet," so I snapped a left without asking any questions. For a while, it felt kind of peaceful. The road wound through thick forest and I figured I was getting ahead of schedule. Then, 2 hours in, the temperature gauge started climbing. I tried ignoring it, but the needle rose into the red and I saw steam curling out from under the hood. I spotted a spot just before a hairpin turn, pulled over, cranked it into park, shut off the engine, and popped the hood. Steam hit me like a hot wave, throat stinging, eyes watering. I checked the reservoir, empty. Of course, I hadn't brought spare coolant. My phone had 0 bars. The nearest civilization was that one porch light I'd passed 10 minutes back. I stayed in the car for a while, hoping someone would drive by. I kept checking the rearview mirror. Nothing. The engine ticked as it cooled. I heard rustles in the underbrush, probably a squirrel, maybe a deer. Or nothing. Maybe something watching from deeper in the woods. No clue. 45 minutes later, I gave up, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and started walking south. My plan? Walk until I found a gas station or motel. If nothing, find a ditch, crash out, and hope someone stopped by at dawn. 15 minutes later, I saw the sign. It was hanging crooked on a rusted pole. The board was splintered. One corner snapped off. In faded red letters, Red Lantern Motel Vacancy. A weak red bulb blinked above it, lighting up a gravel drive that disappeared behind scraggly trees. I hesitated. My brain said horror movie, but I was cold, thirsty, and terrified of walking further. I followed the drive. The lot had 10 gravel spaces, 2 cars, one a rust bucket with no plate, the other newer but dirty. A single row of rooms and an office building on the far end. The green neon "Open" sign blinked, though half the bulbs were out. I pushed the office door open and a bell jangled. Inside was a man, late 60s, maybe 70, hair gray and stringy down past his shoulders, wearing a flannel shirt over a filthy white tee. Static was blasting on a tiny TV behind him. He didn't look up when I came in. I asked, "Rooms?" He grunted. "Cash only," that was it. No smile, no papers. I pulled 2 20s from my pocket and handed them over. He shuffled, pulled out a key on a cheap red plastic tag. 6. No receipt, no questions. He slid the key across with his fingers brushing mine. Then he looked up. One eye slipped off center, never straightened. The other stared at me, solid and sharp. "Don't use the phone," he said, low and oddly calm. I nodded, unsure what to make of it. Maybe he meant the hotel phone. Maybe anything. I grabbed the key and left without asking more. Room 6 was at the very end of the row. No porch light above. When I tried the door, it groaned. It felt like it hadn't been used in years. I shoved it open and stepped inside. It smelled awful. A mix of mold, stale smoke, and something sickly sweet underneath, like rotten fruit left to ferment. My stomach curled. The room was just the basics. Queen bed, nightstand with a rotary phone, a cracked mirror over a rickety dresser, and a bathroom with a flickering fluorescent tube. The bed sagged in the middle like someone had slept there too many times. I pulled back the covers and found a single long brown hair. I brushed it off, tossed my bag onto the floor, and sat on the edge. That phone sat there, beige and dusty. Staring at it made me feel uneasy. I hadn't used it. Didn't know if it even worked, but it was old, probably disconnected. I dropped my shoes and passed out quickly. I was exhausted. At exactly 2:13 a.m., it rang, loud and piercing, right by my head. I bolted upright. My heart slammed in my chest. I stared at it. My brain flared. Cell phone maybe, but no. I'd left my phone dead in my backpack. It rang again, 6 rings this time. I didn't move, didn't breathe. It stopped. I waited 10 seconds. It rang again. I threw off the covers, got up, ripped the cord out. The ringing stopped. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe. My chest felt like it would burst. Then I heard it. A slow scratching, a dragging noise, right under the bed. My feet were hovering a couple inches above the carpet. I froze, eyes locked on the floor. The sound got louder, deliberate. Then it stopped. My face felt raw. I leaned forward, just enough to hear a whisper, soft and low under me. Lay down. I leapt off the bed and backed into the far corner. My heart felt like a jackhammer in my ribs. I grabbed my backpack and lunged for the door. Turned the knob, flipped the lock. But it stayed shut, like someone was on the other side, pushing. I kicked it, once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. Then I looked at the window. A hand slid down the glass, pale, too long, fingers bending backward, long nails scraping. I could feel my guts freezing. Then, blackness. All lights went out. I heard the scratching start again. Quicker now, furious. I grabbed the lamp and hurled it at the door. It shattered. Shade first, then base. Dust and debris everywhere. Still locked. Then the bed creaked. The mattress shifted. Something underneath was pushing up, inch by inch. My scream tore out as I threw myself at the door. Shoulders slammed into the wood. 1 blow. 2. 3rd broke it loose. The door flew open and I tumbled onto the porch, gravel cutting into my palms and knees. I didn't stop. I ran for the office building, burst through the door. The lights were on, but it looked abandoned. Thick dust motes floated in air that felt frozen. The bell above the door sat silent. The man was gone. TV off. Cobwebs draped the counter. The register was untouched, buried under a layer of dust so thick it looked like the motel hadn't been open at all for years. I stepped behind the desk, looking for a back door. Nothing but a blank wall. I bolted back outside into the lot. No sign, not just dark. The whole sign and pole were gone. I walked along the building, counting rooms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Number 6. I stopped. The key was still in my hand. Red plastic, 6 stamped on it. I stared, my voice caught. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. Then I heard it, my backpack buzzing with a phone ring. My phone. The battery had been dead since the breakdown, but it was ringing clear and loud. I dropped it like it burned my flesh. I've never felt something like that ring through me. I picked it up, hands trembling. It stopped the moment I touched it. Holding it to my ear, I heard a whisper. You were told not to use the phone. Then nothing. Then breathing. Slow, deep, next to my ear. I flung the phone into the woods and ran. Didn't care where I'd go. Just away. I kept sprinting until the sky lightened on the horizon. At 6:42 a.m., a trucker in a big rig pulled over. Bleary-eyed, I flagged him down like I'd been dying to see another human. Inside, I stumbled out. Everything. Radiator broke, weird motel, man with off eye, the phone, the whisper, the hand. He just stared. There hasn't been a motel out that way for 40 years, he said quietly. Red Lantern burned down in '86. owner never made it. I didn't say another word through his ride to Asheville. I got there late that evening, never told anyone else about what happened. I was 26 when I ended up managing nights at this odd little motel called the Pine Haven Inn. Not a glamorous gig, not even a normal one, really. You wouldn't stumble across it unless you were seriously off track. It didn't show up on GPS, didn't have a website or even a number listed anywhere, no neon sign, no flashing vacancy out front, just a cracked gravel driveway off a lonely two-lane road and a warped piece of wood nailed between two tilting posts that had Pine Haven hand-painted in faded white letters. Looked more like a warning than a welcome. Pine Haven had exactly 8 rooms, 4 on each side of this tiny little lobby area. Everything inside looked like it hadn't changed since Nixon was in office. There were cigarette burns on the furniture, old floral curtains that felt like starched canvas, and towels so gray and crunchy I think they used to be white. If there was a cleaning staff, I never saw them. It felt like the place just kept running because it didn't know how to stop. I ended up there by accident. I'd been heading back east after a job in Arkansas fell apart. My savings were gone, and I was basically living out of my car. Pulled into a town called Larksville, tiny place. Probably wouldn't even show up on most maps, and I stopped at this diner to use the bathroom and maybe scrounge a cheap meal. That's when I saw this crooked flyer taped to the inside of the diner window. Help wanted. Night desk. Cash pay. No name, no description, just a phone number and a barely legible address scribbled in Sharpie. I figured, what the hell? I needed a roof and a few bucks. Couldn't be worse than sleeping in my back seat. I called the number from a payphone. A woman answered, real curt, told me to come by around 5, that was it. No questions, no interview, just show up. Walter and Marlene ran the place, an older couple who lived in a trailer behind the building. Walter had a thick mustache and always wore flannel, even when it was warm. Marlene barely spoke. She just stared through you like she was always trying to remember where she recognized you from. They gave me room 8, handed me a metal key with a plastic tag, and said I'd get paid $60 a night, cash in an envelope, plus anything I wanted out of the vending machine. No tax forms, no schedule. Just show up at 10, leave when Walter came in at 6. Those first few nights were beyond quiet. No guests, no calls. Nothing but the buzzing from the ancient fridge behind the front desk and the low hum of the vending machine, which had been stocked entirely with off-brand snacks like corn crunchers and expired fruit pies. I'd sit there reading old paperbacks someone left behind, spy thrillers, mystery novels with ripped covers, and drink weird soda flavors I'd never seen in a real store. Occasionally I'd walk the parking lot with a flashlight just to break up the stillness. It wasn't scary at first, just boring. The 4th night started like the rest. I showed up, grabbed a root beer, and settled behind the desk. Was halfway through this book about a Russian double agent when the front door creaked open, real slow. A guy stepped in, just kind of appeared there. He didn't say anything at first. Medium height, wearing a gray flannel zipped up to his chin. His hair was short and neat, and he didn't look at me. Just walked right up to the counter and said, "One night." His voice wasn't creepy, just flat. No emotion, like he was reading off a list. I slid the sign-in book across the desk and asked for a name. He didn't hesitate. Wrote, D. Paul, in thick, blocky letters. Then he pulled out a wad of crumpled bills, mostly 5s, and handed them over. I counted quickly and gave him the key to room 3. I told him breakfast was at 8, though honestly I wasn't sure that was true. He didn't say a word, just turned and walked out of the lobby, headed down the left row of rooms. I watched him disappear behind the wall, then went back to reading. Around 1 a.m., I heard the bell over the front door ding. I looked up, but the door wasn't open. I stared at it for a few seconds. It was completely still. No wind, no footsteps, nothing. I got up and checked the porch. Empty. Took the flashlight and walked around both sides of the building. No sign of movement. All the room lights were off, except for room 3. Its curtain was drawn, but I could see a faint yellow glow coming from the bottom edge. I knocked once, waited, no answer. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. I figured maybe he was a heavy sleeper or had just left the door slightly ajar and the bell tripped somehow. I went back to the lobby and locked the front entrance. Better safe than sorry. At 2:09, the old landline on the desk rang, just once. I picked it up, no voice, just static. It wasn't even a steady sound, just this faint, pulsing hiss, like someone breathing through a broken radio. I said hello twice, nothing. Hung up. Sat there listening to the silence for a few minutes. Then, unplugged the phone and put it on the floor. At 3:11, I caught a flicker of motion behind room 3's curtain. Just a quick movement like someone pacing. I stared, but it didn't happen again. I chalked it up to nerves and sleep deprivation. Then, at 3:44, I saw someone move past the front lobby window. Real fast, real low, like they were crouching or crawling. I shot up, ran to the door, yanked it open. The lot was empty, totally still. My breath felt loud. I turned left and walked toward room 3 again. The curtain was moving. Not a lot. Just this subtle back and forth sway, like someone had touched it and let go. There was no wind. I raised my hand to knock. The second my knuckles brushed the wood, a voice spoke from the other side. No, just that one word. Calm. Measured. A man's voice, real close to the door. I froze. My hand dropped. I backed away. Slowly. Didn't knock. Didn't ask questions. I just walked back to the desk and sat there until 6. Not reading, not blinking, just watching the minute hand crawl. When Walter came in, I asked if he'd seen the guy in room 3. He looked confused. We had someone in 3 last night? Yeah, paid cash, signed the book. D. Paul. I showed him the log. He walked over to the key drawer and opened it. Room 3's key was still there. Clean, unused. You sure you gave him this one? He asked. I'm sure. He didn't say anything, just handed me the key and said, let's check. We walked down the row. The door was shut, no do not disturb sign or anything. He knocked, then unlocked it. Inside was spotless. Bed untouched. Trash can empty. No luggage, no odor. Bathroom looked like it had just been cleaned, except for the mirror. There was one long, wet streak across the glass, from top to bottom, like someone dragged their hand straight down the center. Walter stared for a second, then locked the door and gave me back the key. Didn't say a word. That night, I brought a notebook. I wrote down everything. The time, the light levels, which rooms were dark. At 12:17, I saw the curtain in room 3 shift. No one had checked in. The key was still in the drawer. At 1:43, the phone rang. It was still unplugged. I didn't answer. At 2:31, the overhead light flickered once. I checked outside. Room 3 was the only one lit. I didn't move from the desk the rest of the night. Next morning, I told Walter and Marlene I was done. They didn't ask why. Just handed me an envelope with 3 nights' pay and told me good luck. 2 weeks later, I was passing through the area again. Pure curiosity. I hadn't planned to stop, but I kept thinking about it. I couldn't find the road at first. Drove past it 3 times before spotting this narrow gap in the trees. Looked different. I pulled in. The lot was overgrown, office windows boarded up, no sign, no cars. All the room doors were shut, except room 3. I got out. Walked up to the door, didn't knock, didn't open it, but something was under the mat. I bent down and lifted the edge. A key, room 3. Same tag, same rusty ring. I put it back and left, didn't look back. I'm Nicole. I knew I was pushing it. The gas light had been on for maybe 40-45 miles, and I still hadn't seen another car in at least 20. I'd taken a wrong turn twice thanks to construction detours, and the GPS had totally given up once I hit the Appalachian backroads. I wasn't even headed anywhere good, just some extended family thing in Virginia I'd been guilted into. The kind of thing where you sit around a folding table and pretend you remember who. By the time the vacancy sign came into view, it looked like a hallucination. The red neon buzzed in and out like it was struggling to stay alive, with the word motel half lit and flickering over the front office. There was a plastic sign under it that said Mount Motel. The letters had been sun-bleached to a soft gray, but they were still legible. Mount Motel, it sounded like a fake name for a murder podcast. But I didn't care. I was out of gas and options. There were no other cars. Just mine and this sun-bleached Dodge Charger slouched under the front awning. It looked abandoned, rust everywhere. The plates were gone, just empty screws and flaking paint. I kept my car running as I stepped out. The gravel under my boots crunched loud enough to echo. It was too quiet for comfort. Inside was this guy behind the counter, probably in his 60s, though something about him looked stuck, like he hadn't moved in hours. He didn't look up, just kept staring at this tiny black and white TV on the desk. Some old cartoon was playing, looping the same 5 seconds, jerky and glitched, like someone had paused a VHS and never unpaused it. There was a cigarette burning in a foam cup beside him. It had made this little black tunnel down the side, like no one planned to put it out. I stood there, waiting for a hey or need a room or literally any kind of acknowledgement. Nothing. Then, slowly, he slid open a drawer, pulled out a room key on one of those old-school plastic tags, and shoved it across the counter. "Room 8. You driving through?" he asked, eyes still glued to the screen. "Just looking for sleep," I said. "What's the rate?" No answer. He just gave a little tilt of his head toward the door. I left 220s on the counter, grabbed the key, and walked out. Mount Motel was shaped like an L, one long row of 10 rooms, maybe fewer. Room 8 was way at the end, around the bend where the pavement gave up and let nature take over. The woods were pressed right up against the back wall of the building, thick and dark, like someone had glued a forest to the back of the property. There was one floodlight on the corner of the building, but it flickered every few seconds, like it was losing power. The door resisted when I turned the key. The knob groaned like it hadn't been used in a while. When it finally opened, the smell hit me fast. Bleach trying to cover up something older. Something bad. I flipped on the light. Only one bulb lit up. The other just buzzed like it wanted to die. Carpet was damp near the window. The sink was stained this mustard yellow, and there was a weird whine in the pipes every time I moved. The mattress had a heavy dip in the middle, and the blinds were half broken. One of them was bent outward just enough to leave a slice of the outside view visible at all times. Just trees, crammed together, watching. I dropped my bag on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. It sagged like it remembered someone heavier. That's when I felt something under the pillow, something hard. I lifted it and found a folded paper towel. Inside it was a single long black hair, curled around a small, off-white object. It was a tooth. I flinched and dropped it without thinking. My stomach flipped. I started checking my bag, not even knowing what I was expecting. I just needed something to feel normal, but half of it was wrong. There was a red and brown flannel shirt. Men's XL. Definitely not mine. A matchbook from a place I'd never heard of, Carl's Smokehouse, with one burnt match still tucked inside. No socks. Instead, a single worn leather glove and a little metal key tied to a loop of fraying twine. I took a step back. I didn't touch anything else. Then I heard it. Soft scratch. Like something brushing fabric, but slow. Then, more distinct. Like nails on wood. The sound moved along the far wall, slid under the window, and stopped by the door. I didn't move. The doorknob jiggled once, then again. A sharp click followed, like the chain lock tightening. I could feel my heartbeat everywhere, in my ears, in my neck, in my palms. A third tug came, harder, then silence. I grabbed the desk chair and jammed it under the knob. I didn't sit down. I just stood there, staring at the door, then at the window. Still, just trees. At 1:47 a.m., my phone buzzed in my back pocket. No signal, no bars. but a text came through. "Why'd you open it?" No number, no sender, just that. I stared until the screen went black again. At 2:12 a.m., another buzz. Room 7's been empty since '09, but I hadn't seen room 7. I'd passed room 6. Then there was just a gap, a blank section of wall before room 8. I cracked the door open, slow, like I was expecting to see something right outside. It was quiet, dead quiet. I walked barefoot down the strip, whispering the numbers under my breath. Room 6, then this boarded off part with no knob, no number, but you could still see where a frame used to be, like someone had tried to erase it and failed. I stepped closer. The air got noticeably colder right there. I knocked once before I could stop myself. Something knocked back. I bolted. Full-on sprinted to room 8. Slammed the door shut, shoved the dresser in front of it. I locked the window, sat with my back against the far wall, and didn't move. The flannel shirt was still hanging off the chair like it was waiting for someone else to put it back on. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I was packed. I left the key on the desk and walked out without saying anything. At the time, I was taking whatever jobs came my way. Freelance design work had dried up, and bills don't care if your inbox is empty. So I said yes to this delivery gig, hauling a trailer full of secondhand office furniture from Richmond to a contractor in a town called Lyle Ridge. It wasn't glamorous, definitely not legal in every way, but it paid, and I needed money more than I needed standards. The route was garbage. Endless winding roads through the Appalachian foothills, zero service, and towns so small the gas stations looked like nobody had touched them since cassette tapes were cool. I was about halfway there, probably 5 or 6 hours deep into the trip, when the truck just gave up. No warning. 1 minute I'm cruising around a bend, the next it sounds like the engine's trying to cough up a lung. I rolled to a stop on a narrow shoulder, if you could even call it that, and tried restarting it. Twice. All I got was this wheeze and a sad clicking sound. I remember sitting there for a second, staring at the dash, thinking, cool, guess we're doing this now. The last sign I'd seen was back about 10 miles, Hembry, 14 miles. No towns closer, no bars of signal on my phone, and definitely no tow truck coming to save me. I locked up the trailer, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and started walking. It was late afternoon, but it already felt like dusk with all the tree cover. The sun barely touched the road, and every little rustle in the woods had me looking sideways. About an hour in, the road dipped into this hollow, and that's when I saw it. A faint red blink through the trees up ahead. Took me a second to realize it was a neon sign. As I got closer, the trees thinned out, and there it was, Sunshine Motel. If you're thinking, that sounds kind of cheerful, let me stop you. There was nothing cheerful about this place. The building looked like it had been dragged out of a forgotten decade. Peeling paint, gray wood, 6 rooms all lined up like sad little teeth. The parking lot was mostly weeds, and the only car in sight was mine, miles away. But the neon sign was still going, barely. The vacancy part blinked like it was losing a fight with itself. I figured maybe they had a landline, or at least a roof and a working lock. It was that, or sleep in a ditch. I rang the bell at the office window. After a while, long enough that I started to wonder if it was abandoned, this older woman slid open the glass. White hair, deep-set eyes, and this expression, like I'd just asked her to do algebra. "You got a room?" I asked. She didn't say much, just pulled a key out of a cracked leather pouch and slid it toward me. Room 3. The number was written in red paint, half faded. "Cash only," she said, voice dry and low, like she hadn't spoken all day. I handed over my last 2 20s. She took them and closed the window. That was it. No check-in, no ID, not even a receipt. Room 3 was in the middle. The door squeaked loud enough to announce me to the woods. Inside was, well, it had 4 walls. That's the nicest thing I can say. The mattress was wrapped in plastic and had no sheets. Just a single chair in the corner, a lamp with no bulb, and this musty smell like damp newspapers and old sweat. The bathroom door hung crooked, and when I peeked inside, the toilet looked like it had given up on life a decade ago. No towels, no soap, no anything really, but I was wiped. I plugged in my phone, kicked off my bag, and flopped back on the plastic mattress, boots and all. I must have dozed off without realizing it. I woke up to a noise, a soft thump. Just past midnight, it sounded like it came from the ceiling, which made no sense because there wasn't a second floor. I sat up, confused. The room was pitch black except for the blinking from the neon sign filtering through the curtain. Then I heard it again, this low, dragging sound, slow and heavy, like someone pulling something big across the floor above me, except there wasn't anything above me. I got up and looked around. No vents, no attic hatch, just a plain ceiling. Then the knocking started. One knock, a pause, then three more, steady, not frantic, just deliberate. It came from the wall right behind the bed. I walked over and pressed my ear to the paneling. Nothing. Dead quiet. I turned the TV on just to kill the silence. All I got was static, every channel the same. No picture, no sound. I left it on anyway. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I remember because I checked the clock when it happened. The knocking came back. But now it was from behind the bathroom door. 4 knocks, a pause, then 5 more. Each one made me feel colder, like my spine was reacting before my brain could. I hadn't touched that bathroom since I got in. I crept toward it, slow. The carpet felt damp under my boots. But I didn't hear a thing until I reached for the doorknob. Before I could touch it, the door creaked open all on its own. The light flickered on inside. Not bright, just enough to see the cracked tiles in that same disgusting toilet. The sink was bone dry, but I heard dripping, fast, too fast for a normal leak. I leaned closer, but the sound wasn't coming from the faucet. It was coming from behind the mirror. Then I heard breathing, not mine, slow, wet, like someone trying to breathe through water. I backed away, hard. The light flickered again and went out. I shut the door and dragged the room's one chair in front of it. Didn't sit, just stood there, staring at it. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At sunrise, I grabbed my stuff and got out. That's when I noticed every other room, except mine and room 1, had their doors wide open. I looked inside each one as I passed. No beds, no furniture. Just a single chair in each room, always facing the wall. Not the door, the wall. Room 1's door was closed, but the knob looked charred, warped like it had melted from the inside. I didn't even slow down. I went to the office. The woman was gone. The window was shut tight. Her chair was pushed back like she just stood up in the middle of doing something. I left the key on the counter and walked out without knocking. Still no phone signal. I walked until I found a main road, and after about 5 miles, this beat-up Ford pickup pulled over. A guy in his 60s, wearing a ball cap and one of those hunting vests that probably hadn't been washed since the early 2000s. The truck broke down, he asked. Yeah, I said, climbed in. Where are you coming from? There's this old place, Sunshine Motel, about a mile past that fork in the road. He was quiet for a bit. That place burned down, he said, back in 2014. 6 people died. Whole building went up. Locals don't go near it. I stared at him. No, I just stayed there. Room 3. The neon sign's still up. Old lady at the front desk, his jaw clenched. Sunshine burned down, man. You can Google it. Owner died in room 1. Chair was facing the bathroom when they found her. Smoke inhalation. He dropped me off at a diner just outside Hembry. I called for a tow using the landline and ordered a coffee while I waited. Out of curiosity, I looked it up. Sunshine Motel, destroyed by fire, October 14th, 2014. 6 dead, 2 never identified. Owner, Marlene Brewster, found in room 1, seated, facing the bathroom. It was one of those long solo work trips that sound easier than they are. 4 days, 3 states, and a backseat full of field gear that rattled every time I hit a pothole. I'd done this kind of run before. Just me, the road, and a steady loop of podcasts to keep my brain from turning into mush. I had my route mapped, gas stops plotted, snacks in the passenger seat, and even a spare phone charger buried somewhere under the glove box. The kind of trip where everything should go smooth. And for the most part, it did. Until I hit a detour outside a town I couldn't even pronounce in West Virginia. Construction had shut down the main highway, and the signs pushed me off onto this series of two-lane back roads that twisted through the hills, like someone had laid them out drunk. Cell signals started dropping in and out, and by the time my GPS fully glitched, I was already 30 minutes off my original route with no clue how far the next town was. I figured I'd keep going until I found something, a gas station, motel, even a fast food joint, anything. But all I saw were trees, dense, towering woods on both sides. Every few miles, I'd pass an old trailer with a caved-in roof or a rusted-out pickup sitting on cinder blocks. No people, no lights, just that creeping feeling like I was the only one dumb enough to be driving through there after dark. It was past 8:30 when I gave up on reaching my scheduled stop. My eyes were burning from staring into the high beams, and my neck felt like someone had twisted it halfway around. Then I spotted the sign. It looked homemade. 2 leaning posts, barely holding up a splintered board that said Oak Hollow Lodge. Vacancies, no turn now. No flashing lights, no fancy branding, just chipped white paint and a crooked arrow pointing right. I slowed down, thinking maybe it'd be one of those charming mom-and-pop places with floral bedspreads and weak coffee. The gravel road leading in was tight and overgrown, and I had to creep along just to avoid bottoming out. Then I saw the building, single floor, 10 doors in a row. The kind of paint job you don't even call faded anymore. It was just peeling off in sheets. There was an old soda machine standing crooked outside the office. Its buttons were sun-bleached to the point you couldn't read them, and I could tell from 20 feet away it hadn't worked in years. Only 2 cars were in the lot. Both looked like they hadn't moved in a while. One of them had moss around the tires. The other was parked so crooked it was almost touching the room next to it. It gave me that weird gut twinge, the one that says keep driving. But I was dead tired, and the thought of another hour on the road felt worse than risking some sketchy roadside motel. I parked at the far end and walked over to the office. The front door was locked. There was a buzzer next to the glass, and I pressed it, but it didn't make a sound, just a low vibration, like something inside was trying but couldn't quite function. I waited. A minute passed. Then I saw someone shuffle out from the back hallway. The guy looked off, maybe mid-50s with that balding horseshoe thing going on, wearing a stained collared shirt. His eyes were sharp, not alert, more like he'd already seen too much. He didn't smile, didn't say hi, just stared like I was late to something he didn't want to do in the first place. I said, "Hey, I just need a room for the night." He slid a clipboard through the bottom of the window without saying a word. I filled it out, just my name and phone number. There wasn't even a spot for a license plate, and he never asked for ID. When I asked about payment, he said cash only, with the kind of tone that made me wish I'd lied and said I didn't have any. I handed over the bills, and he slid me a brass key with a red plastic tag labeled Room 9. Then he turned and walked away. I didn't bother asking questions. Room 9 was at the far end, just past the 2 cars. As I walked, the gravel crunched under my shoes in this weirdly loud way, like everything else was dead silent. I glanced at the rooms I passed. Shades drawn, doors shut, no sound, no flicker of TVs or voices behind them. The only light was the one buzzing above my door, and even that flickered like it was trying to die. Behind the motel, the trees loomed close, way too close. There wasn't a fence or a clearing or even a floodlight back there, just a wall of black where the forest started. I stood for a second and listened. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Inside, the room smelled like cheap disinfectant and something older underneath it. The kind of smell that sticks to your clothes if you stay too long. Carpet was thin and slightly sticky, like it had absorbed years of humidity and regret. The bed had a comforter that looked clean enough but leaned hard to one side, and when I sat down, the frame shifted like it might collapse. The bathroom light flickered when I flipped it on, and the mirror above the sink had a long crack across the middle. Someone had tried to fix it with a Band-Aid. An actual Band-Aid. I bolted the door. There was a chain too, but it was hanging half loose from the frame, so I didn't trust it. I pulled one of the dining chairs over and wedged it under the knob. That's a habit from years of travel. You learn quick which places deserve extra precautions. I kicked off my shoes but didn't bother changing. Lay down on top of the covers, phone in hand, scrolling social media until the signal vanished. My last post wouldn't even load. No Wi-Fi, no bars, just me and the hum of the ceiling light. I don't remember falling asleep. I remember rolling onto my side, one arm under the pillow and thinking, just a few hours. Then I woke up. 247 AUEM. My screen lit up when I tapped it. I remember the exact time because I saw it right before I heard the sound. It was faint, soft, like fabric brushing glass. At first I thought it was wind or maybe some branch scraping the window, but it was too deliberate. The sound moved, started at the far end and slowly dragged across the row. Room 7, room 8. Then it stopped, right outside mine. I didn't move. My whole body just froze. My eyes locked on the curtain. I could see a shape behind it, just barely, like someone was standing there, inches away from the glass. No shifting, no breathing sounds, just there. Then came a tap, not a knock, not impatient, just one, perfectly timed single tap, right where my head had been. My heart pounded so hard it made my teeth ache. I slid off the bed as slow as I could and crouched, reached into my bag for the pocket knife I always carry. It's tiny, just a habit thing, not really useful against whatever that was. I didn't open the curtain, didn't want to see a face, didn't want to let them see me. After what felt like forever, the shadow moved. I heard nothing, no steps, no crunch of gravel. Just gone. I crawled to the far side of the room and waited. 10 minutes, maybe more. Nothing. The room stayed quiet except for that heater kicking in with a groan every so often. I didn't sleep again. At dawn, I got up, threw everything into my bag, kicked the chair aside, and walked out. The air outside was cold and wet and the gravel stuck to my boots. Same 2 cars. Same broken vending machine. Still no people. The guy from the office was already there, behind the window, watching me. He didn't move, didn't speak when I dropped the key through the slot. He just kept watching. I didn't even try to make eye contact. I got in my truck and didn't stop driving until I hit a diner with a half-lit sign and a decent enough Wi-Fi signal. I ordered a coffee I didn't drink and started searching. Oak Hollow Lodge, West Virginia. No website, no listing, nothing recent. But I found a post on an old travel forum, all caps, "Do not stay at Oak Hollow. Bad shit happens here." The story was from someone whose cousin had stayed there and disappeared. His rental car was found in the lot, still packed, no signs of a struggle. Room 6, another post said they'd woken up to whispering through the vents in room 4. Said it was a voice repeating their name over and over, like it knew them. Someone else claimed they'd seen tall figures out in the woods holding lights high above their heads, lanterns or torches, moving silently between the trees. Most of the comments were the usual mix, some people laughing it off, others calling it urban legend stuff, but none of it felt fake. That night, I stayed at a Holiday Inn 2 counties over. Bright lobby. Card key. Lots of noise from other guests. Still couldn't sleep. 2 days later, I had to drive past that area again. I told myself not to look. Just stay on the highway, keep moving. But I did. The sign was still there. Same angle, same faded lettering. As I passed the motel, I glanced at room 9. The curtain was open. Just a sliver, just enough. Someone was sitting on the edge of the bed, perfect posture, hands resting on their knees, facing the door. Not moving. I didn't slow down, didn't stop, and I still don't know if anyone checked in after me. I was 29 when I started working at this out-of-the-way place called the Pineside Motel. I was already 2 weeks behind on rent, so when I saw the motel's handwritten flyer taped up on the gas station window, I called the number before even finishing my coffee. Reggie, the owner, answered on the second ring. His voice sounded like it had been sandpapered down by too many years of unfiltered Camels and black coffee. He asked if I was reliable, if I liked working alone, and if I had any reason not to be trusted. I told him no drama, no drugs, just work. He said, "Fine, start tonight. You'll be the only one here after 9. Don't freak out. Things stay calm, mostly." I drove up later that evening with everything I owned crammed in my trunk. Reggie handed me the key to room 2, which doubled as my place to sleep and the employee quarters. No contract, just a key and a nod. We didn't talk much. The motel was about halfway up a ridge in the Appalachians, the kind of place GPS maps still get confused about. You take this winding one-lane road past a bait shop and an abandoned diner. Then suddenly it's just there. A dozen rooms in a long single-story row. The doors were all painted the same tired green, faded and peeling in the corners. Cracks ran through the sidewalk. Paint flaked off the trim. There was an office at one end with a broken neon sign that buzzed even when it wasn't lit. And next to that, a little vending shed that smelled like stale sugar and had maybe one working machine. Everything else? Just trees. Miles of them. I figured I could handle it. I like quiet. I don't need much to feel comfortable. As long as the job was simple and the checks cleared, I was good. For the most part, it was easy. During the day, a few guests would roll through, travelers passing by, truckers, some couples who obviously didn't want to be seen in public. Nothing unusual. I'd clean a room or two, check people in, sweep the walkway. At night, I locked the gate, manned the desk, and watched TV or read behind the counter. Most nights passed without anything worth remembering. But then there was room 6. Reggie flagged it early on. "Don't book that one," he told me. "Some issue in the walls. Mold maybe, plumbing, weird smell. Just don't touch it." That was all he said. He didn't give details, and I didn't ask. I marked it as out of order in the system and left the key in the drawer. Then one Tuesday night, just before midnight, I noticed a car pulling in with its headlights off. It rolled in slow like it didn't want to be seen. I heard the gravel crunching outside and looked through the office window. Old Buick, dented side panel, windows dark. The guy who stepped out didn't carry a bag. He wore this long, heavy coat that went all the way to his boots, and he walked like he knew exactly where he was headed. He came straight into the office, didn't say hi or ask about vacancies, just placed exact cash on the counter and tapped twice. "Closest room to the woods," he said. "Far end." I told him that would be room 12. He shook his head. "Room 6. I froze a second. My hand hovered near the drawer with the key. He didn't repeat himself. Just started signing the guest book. I glanced at it. Just squiggled lines. No name, no number. Just loops that didn't make sense. I don't know why I gave him the key. I still think about that, but I handed it over. The moment he took it, this weird chill went through me. Not cold. Just wrong, like something had shifted and I couldn't take it back. He turned around and walked off without another word. His boots left wide, wet prints across the tile, mud that looked almost black. I watched him cross the lot. When he opened the door to room 6, the porch light didn't come on. Every other room had one that flickered on automatically, not that one. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept flipping between the front desk camera feed and my phone clock. At 2:20 a.m. my phone rang. It was my personal number. No one in town had it. The screen just said, "Private number." I answered. Didn't speak. Neither did the other side. But there was a sound. Soft, wet, like chewing or lips smacking. Then, a faint gurgle. The line clicked and went dead. I immediately checked the monitors. Room 6's feed was fuzzed out, gray static, horizontal lines. The timestamp kept jumping back and forth, a few seconds at a time. Then I noticed the office door was open. I hadn't left it open. I was sure. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed the flashlight, and stepped outside. It was colder than it had been all week, even though the air had been sticky earlier. Pine needles were blowing across the lot like something had stirred them up. The vending shed's door was open and swinging in slow arcs. The Coke machine inside flickered like it was shorting out. I pushed the door shut and turned back toward room 6. The blinds were halfway up. He was standing behind them. Just standing, facing straight out, arms at his sides. He didn't move, didn't blink. His face was hard to see, but I knew he was watching something, or waiting. I didn't hang around to figure out what. I went back to my room, locked the door, and shoved the dresser in front of it. At 3:11 exactly, the power went out. Not the whole building, just my room. I checked the panel outside. No breakers had flipped. When I looked across the lot, room 6's light was on again. I hadn't seen it turn off. In the morning, the Buick was gone. No checkout. Room looked untouched, bed made, towels folded, but there was water pooling in front of the sink. No leak, no damage, just a few inches of standing water, cold as ice. I stepped in it, and it soaked through my shoe instantly. On the mirror, written with a finger through the fog, "Still here." I closed the door, walked into Reggie's office, and said we needed to seal it off. He didn't even blink, just nodded. Yeah, again. That same afternoon, the motel line rang. A woman asked to book room 6. I said it was out of order. She asked, "Is he still there?" I didn't answer. She hung up. 2 nights later, different voice. A man this time. Same number. Same question. I unplugged the landline, set my cell to do not disturb, started carrying a tire iron between the car and my room every night. The next morning, a crow was nailed to the office door. Eyes missing, feet bound with blue fishing line. There was a Polaroid tucked under one wing. Photo of room 6's window. Same silhouette inside, standing at the glass. I dropped the photo on Reggie's desk. He looked at it, rubbed his eyes, and said, "Don't open that room again. Move something heavy in front of it." I dragged an old desk from the closet and barricaded the door, taped a big sign over the handle. Under repair. 3 nights, nothing. Then, on the 4th, my alarm went off at 3:11. I hadn't set it. My room light blinked off and came back 2 seconds later. The TV was already on, static blaring. I lunged for the remote, shut it off, and then heard it. Footsteps directly above me. But my room didn't have a second floor. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the tire iron until morning. At sunrise, I checked room 6. Blinds were up again. Inside, on the mirror. Soon, I cleaned it, shut the door, and shoved a second desk in front of it. That night, I heard 4 loud knocks, 5 seconds apart. I waited, looked through the blinds. No one there. I didn't wait for anything else. At dawn, I left, dropped the keys in the drawer, packed one bag, and drove out without saying goodbye. 3 weeks later, Reggie called. Said the sheriff found a man inside room 6, naked, bleeding from under the fingernails. No ID, no vehicle. The walls were clawed down to bare concrete. On the mirror, written dead center, Darren,